some question about whether this is a passing fad or not. I want to assure you that it most definitely isn't. But just to put it in historical context, it was on October 31st, 1517, 493 years ago, that an Augustinian monk, I got to get that right, Augustinian monk named Martin Luther nailed his, what we now know as his 95 Theses, to the church door in Wittenberg to start a discussion, written in Latin, meant to be just starting a local discussion among academics. Well, because of a technological invention, the Gutenberg printing press that was just a few decades old at the time, his was the first viral communications. They were translated into German, spread throughout Germany in 2 weeks, spread throughout Europe in 2 months, and it said so in Wikipedia, so I know it's true. So, at any rate, I decided to follow up with this 492 years later with 35 social media theses, just because I couldn't think of 95 things to say. I want to deal with 3 of them today, just to sort of set this up. And then I've got a little bit of an interesting twist, I think, at the end. There is a PDF version of this if you want to download and nail to your office door or something, too, I'm sure. I mean, some of you are the owners, so you have the right to do that, but otherwise, check with your supervisor. First thesis. Anybody heard of Seth Godin? Know who Seth Godin is? Okay, I'd really recommend that you read anything he's ever written. It's really good stuff. He talks about the concept of skeuomorphs and when you're trying to make change in an organization. And he says it's really dumb if you want to make a change to say, oh, wow, hey, here's this new thing. You've never seen anything like it before. What he says the best way to make a change is to say, you know, this is just like that, only different and better. Okay, that's what a skeuomorph is. So thesis 1 is a skeuomorph. Talks about how social media really aren't new, that the first social medium is air, sound waves going through air, because if you look at what a definition of a medium is, it's a means by which something's communicated or expressed. So that word of mouth is the first social medium. For Mayo Clinic, it's been important for 100 years that people, we do our research with people who have a preference for Mayo Clinic, and they say that word of mouth, a recommendation from another patient is the #1 reason for their preference. Physician recommendation is another kind of word of mouth. That's number 3. And in between, stories in the news media. The great thing about these, the skeuomorph with social media and with Facebook in particular, is that it takes that power, that broad reach that can get you 1,000 smuggles on 6 continents, but also has that power of the personal recommendation. So it blends it together. And so that's the second of the 3 theses we'll deal with. These electronic tools just make that word of mouth spread faster. It's just the new way that word of mouth happens in the 21st century. So this is our Mayo Clinic Facebook page. And you see on the bottom a woman named Shannon Swing wrote there. She says, July 24th, 2008, leiomyosarcoma tumor removal. Thanks for saving my life, Mom of 4 in Wisconsin. Now, it's great that 500 million people on Facebook could see that, but what's more important is that Shannon's friends see that, that she wrote on Mayo Clinic's wall. I'm not thinking that too many people are going to say, I think I'll go get a colonoscopy at Mayo Clinic because of that. So it's not like an immediate marketing sort of thing. On the other hand, as they are running up maybe 10 years from now with some kind of problem that they're not getting an answer, Mayo Clinic might be more likely to be in their consideration set for a place where they go for a second or a third opinion. And so the last of the theses, I invite you to check them all out because I think they're all good because that's why I wrote them. But thesis 4, social media are the defining communication trend of the 3rd millennium. So if you look at from about 1500 to about 1900, the defining mass communications trend was the printing press. Gutenberg's printing press, the newspaper, made it possible for one person with enough money to buy a printing press and paper and ink can communicate broadly. Marconi, that's this guy here, invented radio or discovered radio or whatever you do with radio, but with radio and TV, made it possible for people to get an FCC license and a radio tower, a TV tower, and reach broadly. When I originally did this slide, it was kind of a play on words, or kind of a tongue-in-cheek joke, because Gutenberg and Zuckerberg just kind of rhyme. But when you really think about it, Gutenberg made mass literacy possible. People wouldn't be reading today without Gutenberg, because there's nothing to read. I mean, back before Gutenberg, there was nothing to read, so why would you teach anybody to read? And while it might be, you might think it's a little bit of an overstatement that Zuckerberg made global mass publishing possible, as I thought about it more, it's really not. I mean, he's building on a lot of other work done by a lot of other people. But on the other hand, 3 years ago when I started my blog, there were 50 million blogs. Today there are 500 million people, 10 times as many people, publishing regularly to the web. And so he may not have made it possible, but he made it fun, he made it interesting, and made it so that my dad, who turns 80 next month, is on Facebook, so he can see videos of his great-grandson and great-granddaughter. I want to just kind of close by asking, anybody have one of these? Yellow Pages ad, okay? You got a Yellow Pages ad, okay. Did anybody get it for free? Did anybody have it just like given to them or anything? Okay, didn't think so. Okay, so if you're spending money on a Facebook, or excuse me, if you're spending money on a Yellow Pages ad that doesn't have the opportunity to have photos, doesn't have the opportunity to have video, doesn't have links that people can connect to your website. I mean, you can publish it there, but you can't actually click on something. So if you're spending money on that, why wouldn't you do the free thing?
Well, thank you for coming today. This is amazing, first and foremost, that we have this many people. I think it just goes to show how interested people are in social media as business owners. I threw this slide in here as my first slide, and it's kind of hard to see, but it's basically a graph. And this is the reason I think we're all here today. That top line there is Facebook traffic. The blue one is Twitter, and the bottom one is LinkedIn. As you can see, the growth with social media, and Facebook in particular, has been just phenomenal. I mean, we're talking about 500 million people now. And actually, I think Mark Zuckerberg was on 60 Minutes on Sunday. I think he said 550 million is what he said on Sunday. So it seems to be growing, continued growing exponentially. I think it's relatively saturated here in the United States, but they just opened, I heard they're just hiring 100 people in Dublin. So now they're expanding into Europe, and it just continues to grow. But this is the reason, you have 500 million people, or 550, pick a number, half of which are going to the site every day, and they're spending an average of 27 minutes every time that they're there. Okay? That's a huge amount of traffic. I mean, it just hasn't happened before where we have this much traffic. And as you can see, the growth continues there. We're talking about Facebook today because, I mean, look at the difference between the number of people who are on Facebook and the number on Twitter. Now, Twitter had a great year last year. They had, I heard they added 100 million users last year, which is phenomenal. But we're talking about 550 million with Facebook. I did a few quick searches on how many were local here. If you look on Facebook, there's at least 80,000 people in our local area right on Facebook. On Twitter, there was about 1,000. Do you know the exact number? I think it's about 1,000 is the research I can tell that are in the local area that are on Twitter. Okay? So from a business standpoint, I want to be where the people are, right? And that's where we want to be. And I think this graph shows that Facebook is where things are at. Now I got to tell you a little story because I was doing this with my wife, and I showed her this chart, and she brought up the comment of like, well, where's MySpace? What happened to MySpace? And I was like, well, MySpace is kind of, that was 4 years ago or so, and it's not really used for business anymore, and it's kind of a dying thing, and it's not really the cool thing anymore. She looked at me and she goes, oh, so if MySpace was a celebrity, it'd be on Dancing with the Stars. I'm like, yeah, you got it. So what we need to understand is that social media is all about the people, okay, first and foremost. We as business owners want it to be about sales. We want it to be about making money, right? That's what we want, okay? But social media is about relationships first and foremost. That's what it's around for, so people can interact and talk with each other. And we need to understand that there's this new thing called permission-based marketing. We as marketers have been so used to dealing with interruption-based marketing, things like